Barricades sealed off Jack Monroe's home, a retired Army vet trapped by a city's relentless marathon closure. Alone, immobilized, his calls for help vanished into cold bureaucracy. Then, against all odds, a lifeline appeared. Something no one expected. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Dr. Jack Monroe's days once began with the steady rhythm of duty and purpose, waking to the clatter of hooves and the eager bark of military dogs under his care. After more than 4 decades serving as an Army veterinarian, tending to creatures whose lives were as entwined with war as his own, Jack had long since left the chaos behind. His sanctuary was a modest brick home on Monroe Street, nestled in the city's historic West End, a neighborhood where time seemed to slow and neighbors still nodded with genuine warmth. This street was his refuge, a place where the scars of battle faded beneath the gentle routine of gardening, quiet evenings, and the occasional friendly chat over the fence. For Jack, peace wasn't just a word, it was a hard-earned right, earned through sacrifice. So when the city announced the closure of Monroe Street for the upcoming marathon, it landed on him like a sudden, harsh jolt, one that rippled far beyond mere inconvenience. The closure wasn't a brief detour, it was a complete blockade of the sole road leading to his driveway. Worse still, the city's explanation that construction work on a nearby park path would extend the closure indefinitely over the weekend felt like a cruel twist. No detours were planned, no alternative access offered. It was as if his home, his very existence on that street, had been erased by an indifferent stroke of a pen. The city's coordinator for the marathon, Lisa Reynolds, approached the project with a laser focus on logistics and outcomes. In her mind, the marathon was a catalyst for the city's rebirth, an event that would draw thousands, flood businesses with tourists, and inject fresh energy into a stalled local economy. Efficiency was her mantra, and she believed that rules were rules. To Lisa, Jack's concerns were understandable, but ultimately secondary. Safety regulations, liability concerns, and the promise of a flawless event left no room for exceptions. Her world was made up of schedules and permits, of broad strokes that never dwelled on individual hardship. Jack's appeals to the city council were met with sterile responses, soaked in legal jargon and impersonal disclaimers. His letters described his limited mobility, his recent knee surgery made every step a struggle, and the vital necessity of emergency access. He spoke of his years of service, his sacrifices, and the quiet dignity he sought in return. But the council's replies echoed with a bureaucratic coldness that felt almost like rejection. "We regret any inconvenience," they wrote, "but the closure is essential for public safety and city planning." The physical blockade was bad enough, but the invisible wall pressing on Jack's spirit was far worse. It wasn't just about a blocked driveway, it was the sense of being forgotten, pushed aside by a city that had once depended on men like him. Every day, as he sat by the window watching marathon banners being hung and streets being barricaded, a gnawing anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. How could a community that once honored its veterans now build an event that shut him out? How could the same city that thrived on stories of courage and sacrifice now erase the presence of one man who had given decades of his life to protect it? Jack felt the edges of his sanctuary fray. His neighbors, some sympathetic but powerless, murmured regrets behind closed doors. The solitude of his home deepened into isolation. Yet beneath the frustration, beneath the growing sense of invisibility, a stubborn ember of resolve began to glow. If the city had decided to close off his street, he would find a way to open a path back, not just for himself, but to remind them all that no one who had served so much could simply be locked away and forgotten. As the marathon's shadow stretched closer over Monroe Street, Jack Monroe's frustration fermented into a heavy, relentless ache. The barriers that now severed his driveway from the city's veins weren't just wood and steel. They were the physical manifestation of an invisible exile. Each passing day tightened the noose of isolation, cutting deeper into the quiet dignity he had fought so hard to preserve. The world outside surged with vibrant anticipation, streets humming with banners, streets alive with runners' footsteps, and the distant murmur of crowds swelling with excitement. But inside Jack's modest brick home, silence pressed heavily, the stillness a sharp contrast to the city's fevered pulse. Neighbors, bound by long-standing ties and empathy, did what they could. Mrs. Caldwell from next door brought groceries when she could navigate the barricades. Young Timmy Jackson offered to run errands, though his nervous energy was no match for the complicated logistics. The delivery drivers refused entry, citing the closure and restricted access, and medical professionals faced scheduling nightmares just to reach Jack for his routine care. Simple tasks, buying a loaf of bread, receiving a vital prescription, attending physical therapy, transformed into ordeals that frayed Jack's spirit as surely as his knee surgery had taxed his body. The city's grand celebration, intended to unite its people, had inadvertently cast Jack into a corner of solitude where loneliness grew unchecked. Each news bulletin that spotlighted the marathon's record-breaking registrations and sponsorships felt like a taunt, underscoring the stark contrast between public festivity and his private confinement. The most bitter irony lay in the fact that Jack, a man who had protected and healed others through countless conflicts, now faced his own battle against invisibility and neglect within the community he served. Meanwhile, Lisa Reynolds found herself caught in an increasingly unbearable bind. The city coordinator's signature sharpness, once a source of confidence, began to falter beneath the weight of mounting public sympathy for Jack. Her professional armor cracked whenever she saw images of the elderly veteran framed against the barricades or read heartfelt posts flooding local social media, voices pleading for mercy, for reason, for recognition. She thought of her grandfather, a proud Marine whose stories of sacrifice had filled her childhood, and the unyielding respect she held for men like Jack. Yet her official role demanded adherence to the marathon's ironclad plans and the safety mandates that no compromise could dilute. This internal struggle gnawed at Lisa with increasing intensity, an ache of conscience that blurred the clear-cut lines she had always relied on. She could no longer dismiss Jack's predicament as a mere unfortunate side effect of progress. It was a human story, raw and urgent, unfolding before her eyes. Still, bureaucracy was a towering wall, and she felt trapped between its immovable stones and the fragile hope flickering in her chest. Then, the unexpected happened. Word of Jack's plight reached the ears of a group of Army engineers volunteering to assist with marathon logistics. Led by Captain Sam Harrison, a military engineer seasoned by deployments and deeply attuned to the needs of veterans, the team recognized the injustice simmering beneath the closure. Sam, who had seen comrades sidelined by wounds both visible and unseen, felt an unspoken kinship with Jack's struggle. The engineers proposed a solution grounded in pragmatism and respect, a temporary but sturdy bridge spanning the barricades, restoring safe, dignified access to Jack's home without compromising marathon operations. Their offer ignited a spark of hope. Yet, city officials, entrenched in caution and liability fears, met the proposal with hesitation. Could a makeshift bridge withstand the liability concerns? Would it complicate security protocols? The questions loomed large, threatening to smother the fragile possibility before it could take form. But Lisa, moved by the engineers' professionalism, their clear dedication to safety, and the undeniable truth of Jack's need, found her resolve shifting. Against the grain of procedure and precedent, she granted reluctant approval, an opening, small but significant, that promised to break the isolating weight pressing down on a man who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. The morning air hung sharp and alive with anticipation, the kind that vibrates through a city on the brink of something monumental. Dawn had barely broken when Monroe Street, nestled within the historic West End, transformed from a silent sanctuary into a bustling artery of purpose. Crowds surged like tidal waves around barricades, voices and footsteps blending into a symphony of energy that echoed off brick facades and wrought iron balconies. Runners, muscles taut and faces resolute, lined up with a shared rhythm, stretching and exchanging nods that spoke of unspoken resolve. Volunteers darted among them, vibrant in neon vests, coordinating final logistics with precise urgency. Yet, amid the swell of organized chaos, one figure remained still on his porch. Jack Monroe, watching, waiting. Jack's eyes followed every hammer strike and every steel beam lifted by Captain Sam Harrison's team, the military engineers who had brought more than tools. They had brought dignity. Each piece of the temporary bridge rose with deliberate care, a silent rebuttal to the isolation imposed upon him. The structure was simple but steadfast, a span of polished aluminum with railings, gleaming beneath the morning sun, wide enough for his wheelchair, and sturdy enough to bear not only weight, but meaning. This was no mere construction. It was a lifeline, a gesture carved out of respect and resolve, bridging the physical and emotional chasms he had endured. His heart pounded unevenly, a tempest of disbelief and gratitude. Every step forward across that bridge was a reclaiming of agency, a quiet victory over the bureaucratic forces that had so nearly erased him. Jack's first footfall onto the bridge was hesitant at first, fingers gripping the railing, eyes scanning the path ahead, before certainty rooted itself in his gait. The sound of his cane tapping the metal deck was not just a rhythm, but a proclamation. He belonged here. Not just to this street, but to this city, this community that had nearly turned its back. The weight of months, the knee surgery, the letters ignored, the loneliness, lifted with each measured pace. Lisa Reynolds approached him shortly thereafter, her expression softened by the unvarnished truth of the moment. The city coordinator, once an implacable advocate for regulations, now bore the humility of acknowledgement. Her voice, usually firm and procedural, carried a note of sincere apology. She admitted the city's oversight, the failure to foresee the human consequences amid the logistical triumphs. More than that, she promised change, a commitment to review policies, to listen before excluding, to ensure that no resident, especially one who had sacrificed for the nation, would face such neglect again. Jack's pain transmuted into something potent, inspiration. It wasn't merely a personal triumph, but a communal one, a signal flare for the power of speaking truth to systems that so often seem indifferent. In the days that followed, his story rippled outward, shared at neighborhood meetings, featured in local news segments, retold in social media posts. His experience became a catalyst, urging others who felt marginalized or silenced to find their voices. Jack spoke openly, encouraging persistence in the face of dismissal, reminding his community that belonging was not a given but a right to be claimed. The marathon itself wove through the city like a river of movement and spirit, runners crossing the finish line beneath banners that now symbolized more than athletic feat. They represented resilience, respect, and the renewal of trust between citizen and city. Monroe Street remained closed to vehicles, yes, but a new pathway had opened, one forged not from asphalt or concrete, but from empathy and decisive action. That temporary bridge stood as a testament to the fragile yet unbreakable connection between authority and humanity, a reminder that progress must be measured not just by speed or spectacle, but by the care taken to include those who make a community whole.